All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in action. The E Squared MMA show is here to give you all the details you need for UFC 265. Lewis vs. Gane for the interim heavyweight belt. Joined with me today is my co-host, Eric Larshell.
How we doing, ladies and gents? And yes, this is UFC 265, right? They are already back in H-Town since these full crowds have started to come around. And there's a reason so. These fights have been sold out from the jump, and this one's going to be no different, when you've got a guy like Derek Lewis headlining, who is the Houston hero in the right name.
Yeah, fighting out of his backyard. So we'll just kick it off with the opening fight of the main card. We have Song Yadong taking on Kenney in the bantamweight division.
All right, you got Song Yadong. He's a plus 100 underdog. He's 16-5-1. He's 3-1 in the UFC of his last four. They're both pretty identical when it comes, to height and reach, standing about 5'8", 68 to 67-inch reach. And they have similar striking analytics. All right. We've seen a little bit from both these guys. They're still relatively young. They got plenty of potential to, come into their own and get in the prime. I like that these odds are pretty close, though, because both these guys have shown to be dynamic fighters in their own right. It can be classic striker versus grappler, and Song Yadong being the striker, and Kenney has a very underrated jiu-jitsu game.
Yeah, and you'll see this is a very big trend on this main card. There are a lot of pick'ems on this card, very even fights all around. Kenney, he's 16-3. He's coming off a split decision loss to Dominic Cruz. Before that, he was on a 3-fight win streak, and before that, he lost to Maria Dalvalishi. I think I just butchered that, but it's okay. So Kenney, I think he does best in his fights when he gets you to the ground. He really likes to exert his wrestling. And with those two losses, Dominic Cruz and Merab, those were two fights where he wasn't able to employ his wrestling as much. And that's a big fact. In fact, Merab was able to take him down. He's a classic boxer, but he does like to use his kicks a lot. And the thing about this fight, ladies and gentlemen, the good thing about the pick'em is, if I'm being honest, I think this is a clear-cut win for Kenney. Song Yadong should be 0-3 in his last few fights. The refs have saved his ass recently. They screwed him over in Marlon Vera, and they gave him a draw against Cody Stamann, where Cody Stamann easily won that fight. So I think not only that, but this fight is definitely the loser's going back to the bottom, basically. This fight's definitely going to propel one of them into the rankings, and the other person's going back down to the unrankings and going to have to fight again.
Yeah, and like you said, both these guys are outside of the top 15, right? But you got guys at number 14 and 15, Marlon Vera and Cody Stamann, who each of these guys have fought. So if you look a little ahead, you got Rafael Sunsauer, Jimmy Rivera. So I think that could be a very practical fight for whoever comes out on top in this one. You're right. Yadong has maybe been bailed out once or twice in his previous fights, but there's a reason Dana keeps sticking him around and putting him on this main card. He gets put in exciting fights. He knows how to bring the fight to him. He's an aggressive striker, and he possesses his own 75% takedown accuracy. So he could be riding that statistic towards Kenney in this matchup as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong with Song Yadong. He's also only 22. I'm pretty sure he's been there since he's 19. He's one of the youngest on the whole UFC card. The thing about Song Yadong is he's got power for this division. He's a technical boxer. He's really good boxing. He doesn't really employ the kicks as well. And in his last few fights, the gas tank has been an issue. If you'll notice when they do fight, he is a little more muscular and big for the division. So Song Yadong has had issues with his gas tank. And we've seen also with his takedown defense, it's good in the early rounds, but he has been prone to get taken down in the second and the third, which would be huge for Kenney. I think if Kenney wants the easiest way to win, he's going to employ that wrestling as much as he can and slowly wear on Song Yadong. The only thing that Song has going for him, though, is Kenney does like to get in fan favorite fights, which is where Song Yadong thrives. Kenney has no problem standing there and banging, which Song Yadong loves as well, because Song Yadong has a rock solid chin.
Rock solid, and they're under the bright lights in Houston, right? I think this is the first time both these guys have seen a fight on the main card or in a main event. So yeah, this could come down to a little bit of experience, but Yadong, I think if he does win, he does have the advantage in that brawler uh, type of fight, you know. And I'll give the advantage to Yadong in the training camp too, right? He trains with Team Alpha Male, which we all know is arguably one of the greatest small guy camps in the world. So this could come down to coaching, since a lot of these statistics line up pretty evenly.
Yeah, I think also you're going to see this a lot. Like I said, it's a lot of pick 'em, so you won't really have to rely on the odds. You're going to have to figure out who you like more. The only reason I'm leaning towards Kenney is because Song Yadong has been bailed out with the judges lately. So if it goes to the judges, I don't really know how they're going to score it. Song Yadong does somehow get favorable um, judging. I would also give the I would give the power to Song Yadong. I would give the more of the flow to Casey Kenney, only because Casey Kenney does employ kicks way more than Song Yadong. Song Yadong rarely throws kicks. With that being said, though, Song Yadong does have power in his hands. Under the bright lights, Derek Lewis is the main event, heavy swanging and banging. So Casey Kenney might go in there and try to do that, which is not really the game plan you want to employ against Song Yadong. But with that being said, with the odds this close, I would go with Casey Kenney.
I'm going to pick Song Yadong at plus 100. I think, like you said, it's a pick 'em, but under the bright lights, I think a lot of these guys are going to want to show out and go for that performance of the night bonus that Dana White's going to give.
Yeah. So there you go. Got to see which side you're riding with. I think the stats last week, we didn't do too hot. I think we weren't overall very good. I think the one fight we did differ on, I forget who it was. Lauro came out on top. So currently Lauro is 1 win ahead of me. So if that's any indication, keep that in mind.
Since we've started pulling these numbers, yeah.
Next up in the women's strawweight bout, we have number 10, Tecia Torres, taking on number 12, Angela Hill.
Talk about two journey women. Yeah, screw journeyman for this division and in women's MMA in general. Both of these women have been around, I believe, since the Ronda Rousey era. They were both Ultimate Fighter alumni, and people forget they have fought in the past, back in 2015. So this is a rematch where Torres came out with the unanimous decision. But since then, I mean, there's a reason both these two women are on the main card now. They're both riding significant fight win streaks. They've both advanced in their careers, gained a lot more experience, and I feel like they know each other a lot too, because these are more tight-knit communities with the women rosters, because there's not as many athletes on it. Let's be honest. Let's see. Tecia Torres is a little bit shorter. If we're going to break it down like this, she's got a little bit reach disadvantage, but both women are aggressive strikers. I guarantee they will be standing and banging, and honestly, a bit surprised if it goes to the ground whatsoever.
Yeah, and so Angela Overkill Hill, she has fought 9 times since 2019. She's coming off a win against Ashley Yoder. Before that, she had a split decision loss to Michelle Watterson. Before that, she had a split decision loss to Claudia Gadalia, and then rode a 3-fight win streak on that. Dana loves Angela Hill. She's also a commentator for ESPN, but she's always down to fight. She's always in great shape. She's always in training camp, so she does like to fight a lot. Angela Hill has a really good Muay Thai base / fighting style. She really likes to keep it at distance, and that's where she does best, if she can dictate how the fight goes and just the overall flow of the fight. Whereas Tecia Torres, I'm pretty sure her nickname's Tiny Tornado, which is basically her style. You know, she's going to get in there and just throw hands, get as close as possible, throw hands. So it's a perfect matchup to see, because Angela Hill doesn't really do well if she can't dictate the distance and when she wants to strike. With that being said, I totally agree with La Rochelle. I do not see any way, shape, or form this goes to the ground. This is going to be a complete 3-round fight of just standing like we usually do. I'm going to take the over in this fight. I think that's if you're going to make a parlay, I think this is a pretty over fight. They're both pretty tiny. Angela Hill has had some knockouts recently in her past against Hannah Cyphers and Ariane Carnolosi. So there can always be the chance, but if history tells me right, I just know in most women's fights, unless it's the top, it's not really going to end before the bell. It's going to go to the judges.
Yeah, and both these women are, known for being volume strikers. And Angela Hill, she owns her fair share of knockouts. Tisha Torres, in a few of her recent fights, beat Hughes by TKO and Van Buren by decision. So yeah, the leather's going to be laid on. I agree though that neither of these women possess that sort of one punch knockout power. So yeah, taking the over is a smart bet on this one.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure this is a pick 'em as well. In the press conference, Tisha Torres said that she doesn't see any way for victory for Angela Hill. Not surprising. I mean, that's what most fighters say. But she said she really thinks that her wrestling is 100% better. So maybe that's a little hint of what her game plan is. But then again, her nickname is the Tiny Tornado, and like La Rochelle said, volume striking. That's how she's going to get it done. With that being said, I'm going to ride with my Angela Hill. I think just with the consistency and the amount of fighting that she does. And I'm going to lean in that she's going to be able to control the flow of the fight where she does her best work. I don't think she's going to let Tisha Torres in on the inside. And I think she does have a beautiful front kick, and I think if she employs that very well, and she also fights behind the jab very well, and I think that's how this fight's going to go. She's going to use the front kick to keep the distance, and she's just going to fight behind her jab and outpoint Tisha Torres for the victory.
See, I'm going to take Torres at minus 140. So we're already we're already drawing the line in the sand on this one, ladies and gentlemen. I love Tisha Torres' mentality, the way she finds a way to close that distance with some crisp boxing. She'll go to the body, head, and she's got the threat of a takedown, which Angela has to respect. And Tisha has a great chin on her. So not that Hill's not going to be able to land her shots. I just think that Torres will be able to weather the early storm and eventually pick her spots and get inside.
Yeah, and Tisha is currently the 10th ranked fighter, whereas Angela Hill is the 12th. So if Tisha gets this win, she'll definitely, both of them will be inside the top 10 for their next fight. Now moving on to my second favorite fight of the night, dare I say, behind the main event in a welterweight bout with huge title implications on the line. We have number 5, Michael Chiesa, taking on number 6, Vicente Luque.
And this is one that I foreshadowed, ladies and gentlemen, that we had talked about months ago, that I saw this potentially becoming a matchup. And look where we are, guys, right? Number 5 versus number 6. And talk about two guys that couldn't be more deserving. You got Michael Chiesa at minus 105, and I think Luque is like minus 115. So again, this is a third fight that's a pick 'em. So this has been a tough episode for Evan and I. I think we can both agree on that. There hasn't been clear cut advantages that we're both like obviously just agreeing on. A little bit about Chiesa, right? He's 18-4. He's won 4 out of his last 5. He's an ultimate fighter. I think season 15 winner. He'll have a 2-inch height advantage, but they're identical in reach. And recently he's beat the likes of Carlos Condit by one of the sickest one-arm Kimuras I think the UFC has ever seen, which is damn near impossible, which shows the type of level of his jiu-jitsu. It's on another planet, and he's been like that. He's been that base type of jiu-jitsu fighter that now just recently we're seeing that he can throw strikes, whether to keep his distance or close the distance. He's definitely evolving in his own regard.
Yeah, and he's taking on Vicente, the silent assassin, Luque. He's riding a 3-fight win streak. And this man is the exact opposite of Michael Chiesa. This man loves to stand and bang. He has 11 knockouts of his 20 wins. He lost to Stephen Thompson, Wonder Boy, and then he followed up with a doctor stoppage win over Nico Price, a KO by knee and punches to Randy Brown, and then a submission by the Bravo choke against Tyron Woodley, where you could basically count that as a knockout. Tyron Woodley just wouldn't go out, so the submission ended up happening. I love this fight only because this is the ultimate wrestler versus striker at the highest level. Both these guys are so good at what they do. Vicente Luque, especially with his hands, does have a split decision win over our boy Platinum Mike Perry back in the day. He's fought in the UFC since 2015. He's fought a who's who. His only losses since 2015 have been against Leon Edwards and Wonderboy Thompson. So you're seeing what kind of talent defeats him. And if you see what type of fighter, if you want to look deeper, is strange strikers and volume strikers. Leon Edwards with the volume striker and Stephen Thompson with that weird karate type stance. Anything you want to put on with Michael Chiesa?
I mean, I agree with that. Some of Luque's top top opponents that he's lost to, right? You said he's got that weird karate style in Thompson, and then he sees someone with that volume striking. My point is now he's getting three-headed snake. I think he's facing someone in Michael Chiesa who has maybe the best grappling in the welterweight division as a whole. I used to think it was Damian Maia, and I think that was the fight we had disagreed on in the last card. You picked Bilal Muhammad, and I picked Maia just because I ride with the jiu-jitsu boys. But I should have known better. Maia at his age, what have you, way past his prime. Chiesa, that's not the case here. I think Chiesa is in his prime, and he's primed to make that title run. Yeah, like you said it perfectly. This is the striker versus grappler match that everyone wants because both these guys are basically top five. Let's be honest. And so this is going to come down to who can implement their game plan more. It's Chiesa. It's one of the two. He's going to use that jab to keep the distance, right, and provoke Luque to be more aggressive to where Chiesa can go for the takedown. Or we've just seen it how he does. He kind of just bull rushes and eats a few punches to get in to close the distance and dominate. Because everyone, it's not even straight double legs or single legs. Chiesa loves that body lock. If he just gets a hold of you, over underhooks doesn't matter. He knows how to transition and put on that pressure and ride you like a bull down, and then just dominate. And we've seen it. So this is super interesting. I love that it's a pick 'em too when the styles are so different.
Yeah, and they're both riding so high right now at the highest point in their career, basically, which is why I'm so pumped about this fight. This could potentially be a fight of the night. And like Lauro said, it's going to come down to who implements their game plan better. With Vicente Luque, he has knockout ability in that right hand, hands down, and he also has top 3 probably chins in the UFC. I mean, this man does not get knocked out. He doesn't have a knockout. He doesn't have a knockout loss. He has been submitted twice back in the day. Let me see here. Back in 2013 by arm triangle choke, and then a triangle arm bar. So that was way back in the day. However, this is going to come down to who implements the style. So with it being a pick 'em so close, it really comes down to which style do you ride with more? Do you ride with the jiu-jitsu guys or do you ride with the striker guys? If that's any inclination on how we ride, I'm going with Michael Chiesa, I think, because I do know that Michael Chiesa, like you said, he's not afraid to get hit. I don't know if he's been hit by anyone that hits as hard by Vicente Luque, but at least we know that he's not going to be scared to take a hit to get that body lock. And like you said, it's the body lock. It's not even going for the legs. Like he just has to get a hold of you, and then let's see what he can do on the ground, because that's not where Vicente Luque likes to be. Not saying that he doesn't have the ability to do that, but Vicente Luque would much rather stand and bang. And I know this is a stand and bang card for sure. I just think after Michael Chiesa's, what'd you say, the one-arm Kimura?
Yeah, on Carlos Condit. Super
I was
rare.
just so impressed with his last performance. I think Michael Chiesa is peaking to especially against Carlos Condit. And I know it's not a knock on Vicente Luque, but he fought Nico Price. Then he fought Randy Brown at the end of his career in 2020 August. Then he fought Tyron Woodley, who is just at the very end of his career. So Vicente Luque has been knocking these guys out, but not knocking the up-and-comers out, more of the guys that hold the ranking and have been going down as the career. Whereas I feel like Michael Chiesa has really been grinding and improving, and I think his stand-up has improved significantly as well.
Absolutely, it has. Yeah, striker versus grappler, ladies and gents. I mean, Evan, me. I'll go Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until I die when it comes down to these matchups. So I like Chiesa at -105. And people, yeah, you can brag on Luque's knockout ability, all in the same, but Chiesa owns the submission knockout ability. Essentially, he gets a hold of you. Not many people get away from that. No matter if he has a neck and arm, his chokes are spectacular. His grip, and it comes down to those body locks. He doesn't need to be shooting for takedowns, which Luque can typically easily sprawl and get away from. All it takes is a couple punches just to close the distance. You can only run for so long. So the Maverick's going to take it.
Yeah, and another reason that I was thinking this as well is because in our last match that we saw this happen was the Gilbert Burns Stephen Thompson match, where it was weird striker versus jiu-jitsu, and Gilbert Burns dominated that because he got Stephen Thompson to the ground. Not saying Stephen Thompson and Vicente Luque's ground games are comparable, but Stephen Thompson showed a hesitancy to strike. And if Vicente Luque shows a hesitancy to strike, then it's all Michael Chiesa all day. This really comes down to, like I said, who you ride with. Preferably, are you a jiu-jitsu wrestler guy that you believe in, or do you believe in the strikes? If Vicente Luque can keep Michael Chiesa at bay, first off, if you're going to take Vicente Luque in this fight, just take him by knockout. Don't take him straight up. Just get those extra however much plus money it's going to be, because Vicente Luque is a knockout specialist. So if you're going to ride with Vicente Luque, might as well get that extra bang for your buck. Michael Chiesa, just take me and Laura are just jiu-jitsu fanatics on the point that we believe that's the way to win. So take Michael Chiesa. If you're going to take him by submission, it's possible. It's bold. I mean, Vicente Luque is pretty well rounded on the ground and really strong as well. So I don't know how that's going to go, but Michael Chiesa is no joke on the ground.
Fair. You said it best. Let's move on.
All right. We are moving to the co-main in the bantamweight division, which I believe these two guys are fighting for one. After, if whoever wins probably will fight one more time, and then they have a title shot or the number one contender. We have number 5, Jose Aldo at -140, and number 9, Pedro Munhoz at +120.
Two guys, right, in the mid to late 30s. They're a little past their prime, but like you said, they might need 1 or 2 more fights if they're going to make a title run again before the end of their careers. All right, Jose Aldo, 29-7, won 2 out of his last 5 in the UFC, but arguably the featherweight king of all time. He'll definitely go in the Hall of Fame. Don't get me wrong, but his transition in bantamweight's been a little rocky. Not to say that's not the correct move, but typically when guys get a little older, they become a little more hesitant to cut that much weight. So the fact he's going to bantamweight is still a little shock to me, but he's going to ride with it. This, like I said, this is the tail end of Aldo's career. I think it's his last chance at a title run. Most recently beat Marlon Vera in December. This is another one of those. This is striker versus striker. Don't get me wrong. Pedro Munhoz, dynamite in both his hands as well. One of the favorite fights I've ever seen was him and Cody No Love Garbrandt, where they just stood in the pocket and threw haymakers till someone fall. Munhoz came out on top. Aldo will not shy away from that type of fight either. Don't get me wrong. He loves to stand and bang, and his strikes are equally dynamic with the kicks as well.
Yeah, and he's taking on Pedro Munhoz, who is 1-2 in his last 3. He lost to Aldo, the current champ, then lost to Frankie Edgar in a split decision that was very close. And then he beat up-and-comer Jimmy Rivera by unanimous decision. And fun fact, ladies and gentlemen, it'll probably surprise you, but Pedro Munhoz is actually a few months older than Jose Aldo. It's just, yeah, that's what I said too. It's literally just because we've been seeing Jose Aldo forever. We all think he's like 50. So if you're going to point to the fact that Jose Aldo is old, Pedro Munhoz is older. These guys are not young bucks. Pedro Munhoz fights out of American Top Team, one of the best training camps in the world. So he does have a lot of very well-rounded people around him. And like, my big thing is I don't see this going to the ground, even though both these guys are very well versed on the ground. This is both of them like to box. I would give just cleaner boxing to Pedro Munhoz, but I would give the finesse boxing to Jose Aldo to get it done. I mean, he is the featherweight king. With that being said, I mean, I'll just cut right to the point. I think Pedro Munhoz gets this done only because I think his chin is a hair better. I think Jose Aldo's chin is getting old, especially after that Peter Yan beatdown where that ref should be fired for letting that happen. I mean, that was absurd, the beatdown he got. And like Lauro said, Jose Aldo got old and then went down a weight class, and it was rocky. He figured it out now, but it was rocky in the beginning trying to figure that out. And I was very surprised that he went down. So he does have to deal with that extra weight cut at this age. It's not his natural weight.
Yeah, not his natural weight. And you want to bring up training camps. Aldo's been out of Nova União forever, which is the elite camp in Brazil under Andre Pederneiras, who's been his longtime coach forever. So the experience factor in the coaching will not be at a disadvantage when it comes to Jose Aldo. I'll tell you that. when it comes down to both these dynamic strikers, right? The way I see it, Munhoz, the way he's won some of his fights and won a lot of those exchanges, he's very heavy on his front foot when he sits down and throws those bombs in his hands, right? What have we seen from Aldo? He has arguably some of the nastiest leg kicks the UFC's ever seen. So I could definitely see him implementing those early in the rounds, to get Munhoz a little lighter on those feet. Yeah, his chin might have lost his step, and this again, another one of those pick 'em. I don't know what's going to happen. Is Munhoz going to catch him early in the beginning, or is Aldo going to implement those kicks and keep a better distance? This is going to be a barn burner of a fight too. I think it's going to stay on the feet throughout the entire fight.
Yeah, and this is definitely the fight I'm least confident about in my pick. This is probably the closest fight that I believe that if you told me one of them won, I would not be surprised in the slightest. They are so evenly matched and so stylistically evenly matched. Like neither one of them is really that better than the other one at one thing or another. They might by a tick, but not a lot. I didn't even think of that, but I think that's a great point. Pedro Munhoz is really heavy on that front foot. And if Aldo implements it, then, that's game over. We've seen how the calf kick, you land like 3 of those and it's game over. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know even the over under, to be honest. If you told me one of them knocked the other one out, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me this went to the judges' scorecard, I wouldn't be surprised. It is unfortunate, though, Laura, that we do have to pick one or the other. I'm going with Pedro Munhoz just because I think his chin's just a little better, even though he is older. I think Aldo's been in a few too many wars. I think he's coming to the end of his career, and I think Pedro Munhoz gets it done. I couldn't tell you, ladies and gentlemen, how it's going to get done. I just think his boxing is just a little bit crisper, and I think that's how this whole fight's basically going to be, is just a boxing match.
I agree with the kickboxing match in its own right, but I'll keep things interesting, right? I'll go with Jose Aldo. I'll go with the old man. Much like myself, I'm never going to count the old dog out until he's done barking. Okay, Aldo, I think he can get this fight done. He's just the experience factor, in my opinion, can outweigh whether his chin's going to hold up or not. But like you said, there's a who's pick 'em. But to keep it interesting, and we'll get these records start swaying one way or the other after this event to see who knows what between Evan and I. And now let's move on, ladies and gents, to, you guessed it, the main event.
Let's do it. We have come to it. The main event, the heavyweight interim title bout between number 2 ranked Derek the Black Beast Lewis, number 3 Ciryl Gane.
Or Derek, as I like to call him, my balls was hot, Lewis. Coming in at a whopping plus 290. Shocked the world on that one, especially in his backyard of Houston, Texas. Let's go now. He's 25-7, right? Won 4 out of his last 5 in the UFC, mainly by knockout. Beat the likes of Curtis Blades most recently in a nasty uppercut. Thought that man hit flatline. I thought he was dead. All right, he's fought the best of the best already, splitting out Ngannou back in the day. That's the rematch everyone wants to see in general. But who's a better opponent in the meantime than Ciryl Gane? I mean, the stars have aligned for these heavyweights to see who's the next shot at the king.
Yeah, and it's just Dana White being petty. This came about basically. Francis won the belt from Stipe. Dana wanted Francis to defend his first title defense against Derek Lewis on this card. Francis said no, so Dana said, all right, fuck it, I'm just going to create another belt. So the winner of this fight will fight Francis probably at the end of the year, probably in December at the last pay-per-view, or January, to unify the belts. Derek's taking on Ciryl Gane, who's 9-0. Pretty swift uprising from fighting in the UFC to now fighting for a title. But the thing is, and Daniel Cormier said it best, he thinks Ciryl Gane is that next evolution at the heavyweight. If you haven't watched the Ciryl Gane fight, for being a heavyweight, his movement and his striking are incredible. He can switch stance. He can get his fucking foot up there like nothing. He employs such a well Muay Thai fighting style, and it's honestly incredible to watch. He weighed in at 247 pounds, but just how he's built like Francis Ngannou. He's well proportioned for the heavyweight division, and DC said it best. He thinks this is the next evolution of what heavyweights can be, where they're striking. He almost looks like a lightweight or a featherweight with how he fights. The The big thing, though, that I'm really surprised about is, like Laura said, he's a minus 350 favorite against Derek Lewis, which is absolutely incredible considering he's only 9-0. He hasn't really fought the highest level of competition. Like, he's fought Volkov, he's fought Jairzinho Rosenstruik, yes, but at the same time, he kind of just propelled so quickly up these rankings. I would have liked to see him fight a few more times against a few different styles. Because Derek Lewis knocked the fuck out of Curtis Blades, who was basically knocking on the door. I think he was number 2 at the time, knocking on the door. With that being said, this is a 5-round fight. Cyril Gane does not have a problem with the cardio. Yeah, what do you weigh in on Derek Lewis game plan strategy?
I think Lewis that we have seen, and this is big, right? He's improved his cardio. And we've literally seen him grow up in the octagon to where after a win, after a round and a half, he'd be taking his pants off because he was so damn exhausted. He's really good at hiding and using his explosive power when he needs to. All right. His fight IQ is increasing right before our eyes. And so that to me, that gains confidence in a guy like Lewis, who already, if his cardio is getting a little bit better, I guarantee that power has not transcended any less. All right. I mean, that power is still there. And those odds, yeah, they're so spread, but how can you bet against a guy who's the knockout king, in the UFC? The spread's a little high, and Gane has the intangibles, right? He's got better kickboxing, he's got better movements, he's got more tools to win this fight. But at the same time, in my mind, you can't ever count someone out who, at the flip of a switch, kind of like in Ngannou, he just touches your chin the right way, and I don't care who you are, you're falling asleep.
Yeah, and with Gane has a very good ground game as well, which is very impressive. You rarely see that at the heavyweight, but don't let that fool you. Derek Lewis said it best. He is the best blue belt in the world, and he employs the weirdest way to get up, and it's all off of brute strength. He basically just stands up. I don't know how he does it, but that's basically, he'll tell you that he literally just stands up, and he's the best blue belt in the world. But Cyril Gane does, and it's so funny too because Derek Lewis has been in there with some killers on the ground named Alexei Oleinik and Curtis Blades, and they tried to take him down. Alexei got him to the ground, but Derek Lewis just employs this just massive strength advantage where he's just going to stand up. And like Lauro said, I think these odds are so stacked against Lewis. He's such a big such a big underdog. And like Twitter said it best, the guts saying Gane, the stats say Gane, but it's Lewis by knockout in his home state, home city. Like, how can you bet against the man?
Yeah, and to kind of wrap this up, I'm taking Lewis at plus 290, and I think you're a fool if you don't, because if you take Gane and he gets knocked out in the first round, it's going to be one of those I told you so. Like, Gane to beat Lewis is going to have to not only weather a tremendous storm, but implement, like, Lewis is not a guy you could just put away easy. I don't care who you are. It's going to be hard enough to get it to the ground. Alexei Oleinik did it and had one of his most, like technical submission he's ever portrayed. It was that Bon Fluke choke that he had for almost a minute, and he basically couldn't get it. Lewis was kind of just sitting there, and Alexei at the end of the fight, he goes, his neck was too big. I just couldn't submit him. And then sure, Lewis just somehow, yeah, it's that Bruce strengths. He can bench press pretty much anybody, get them off him, and just get to his feet like it was nothing. So talk about a disheartening effect if you're a guy like Cyril Gane, and again, like Curtis Blades, who has much better grappling than Cyril Gane does, and he couldn't do anything about it. He's got to be wary of that uppercut too if he wants to change levels and go. I know he's thinking about that. So for me, I'm hitting Lewis at plus 290. It's hard not to. It's so disrespectful that it's in his backyard of Houston, Texas, and I think he's there to put on a show. He's not going to fall in his home city.
Yeah, and like Laura said, Lewis is so hard to put out. Like, for the example of Volkov fight, if we go to Verdict MMA and look at the global scorecard, he was down 4 rounds going into the 5th and still knocked Volkov out. So that's the thing about Gane. Gane can win every round he could even be winning every round, including the 5th round, and then get touched once. Like, all it takes from Derek Lewis is one punch to change it. So Gane would have to implement his game plan 100%, perfectly executed for 5 rounds. He's not going to knock Derek Lewis out. He's not going to submit Derek Lewis. So he's going to have to stand there for 5 solid minutes and be able to implement his game plan so perfectly. So and especially with these odds, like, you're going to be clenching your butthole if you're going to bet on Cyril Gane, because you're going to have to sit there for 25 minutes and hope to God that Derek Lewis doesn't touch him, because it doesn't matter if Derek Lewis loses the first 3 rounds, even loses the 4th. Like, he's still going to come out there and come for the knockout. And that's why I'm taking the exact same thing as La Rochelle. I'm taking Derek Lewis by knockout plus money on the knockout. And like you said, you'd be stupid to not take that.
Yeah, well said. That's all I have on this end. I'm just ready for tomorrow. I want to see these boys under the bright lights.
Yeah, and the last thing we'll do is just a quick matchmaking for our matchmaker. We already know what the champ will do, but we'll bring it back to the Michael Chiesa Vicente Luque fight. Who would you like to see them fight next? Chiesa being at 5, Luque being at 6. They're basically such a same ranking. It doesn't matter who's winning. We'll just say the winner. So Colby Covington's at 1. He's going to fight Usman at the end of the year. Then you have Gilbert Burns 2, Leon Edwards 3, and Wonder Boy at 4. Wonder Boy coming off a loss to Burns.
If Chiesa wins, I'd love to see him versus Gilbert Burns. I think that's a very interesting matchup. Top level jiu-jitsu on both ends, and that'd be grappler versus grappler. If Luque wins, I'd love to see a rematch with Leon Edwards. I think that could be a lot more exciting this time around. Both these fighters have clearly progress in their own regard, coming into their prime. So, I mean, there's several matchups you could put in those top 5 guys, but those are the 2 I'd like to see, depending on who comes out on top.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's our UFC 265 card for you. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow. It's coming straight from Texas, Houston. It should be a great one.
Take it easy. Take it easy.